describe qualitative research? Do they have to log in? No? Okay. So, so far we haven't had anyone. Okay. Okay, so we have participants' opinion. A. Let me hide the outcome. Okay, so because I don't want to interrupt you. Could you hide it? Okay. Don't worry, it could be a phrase. Okay, it could be only one keyword or a few words. That's fine. Okay. All right. So far we have got 7 responses. Okay, we have 10 responses. Okay. I think technology sometimes is quite helpful, right? So I know that, oh, 11, good. We need 3 more responses. Okay. I'll send you, pass you the Taipei Tech International Conference. Okay. I think the registration fee for a student is $500. So I think it's the money for you to have, like if you go to a restaurant, or pretty much the money that you spend on that. So I think it's worth your investment. Okay, invest your own research interest. Particularly, this is just the first semester. Get in and particularly try to see those conducted study of your own research interest. So what exactly what I have done? Okay, that will probably shorten you 1 semester. Okay, so it's worth much more than $500 because that helps you to jumpstart a huge jumpstart for you to get started with. Okay. All right. We are still waiting for one. Okay, while we are waiting, just a very quick reminder. I mentioned about the double degree programs, but here I have a disclaimer. Right? Disclaimer is, I mentioned about that, and I said that it's just alternative opportunity for those who are interested. But sorry, I'm not pushing everyone to go, right? Because everyone have different conditions, different considerations. Okay. But I just think that we will give you this opportunity. If this is of your own interest, then definitely you could consider that. Okay. All right.
Professor, sorry. If I willing to take the double program, then do I need to take all 4 required courses in the first year?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
Okay.
I think I have mentioned about this. Okay. Because you have to finish all the required course. Of course, if you want to take more than 2 years, you can come back and then continue to take required courses. However, if you really want to make it like 1 + 1 within 2 years, definitely you need to finish all your required coursework in the first year. So, and then go there for the second year. And come back to oral defense for your thesis, then you are done. Okay, so that's why we changed this year. We start changing our program, having all the required coursework in the first year. Okay. All right, so are we done? Good. Let's take a look at, wow, you can see, okay? So you see the bigger one is a lot of, most of our students have this word, interview. So when you think about qualitative research, you think about interview. So interview is a method, right? Method. And why interview? There are so many methods, but why interview? Anyone want to give a response? Diva, did you also write interview? Yes, okay, so but then why interview? Why when you think about qualitative research, you think about interview?
Because it's the key feature to distinguish between qualitative and quantitative. Because quantitative based on the numbers, the survey numbers, while the qualitative based on the attitude of the interviewers to conduct their judgment based on that.
Okay, so you think, okay, good. Let me follow up a little bit. So what about, Frank? So tell us, share with us a little bit more. What could interview offer that other methods such as survey could not offer us?
Based on a certain context, if we want to observe a case or some participants, we can get some ideas or their thoughts from this specific circumstances. So we don't just follow other researchers' data, we have our own data.
Okay, we have our own data because we conduct our own interview. And then we get to, the whole point is about get to know the voice, the perspective of our participants in that particular context. Okay, if we are interested in this context, nobody except the interview with the participants, nobody can tell you what exactly the students feel or think, except that you interview them and you get their first-hand data, okay, to show their experience. Okay. For example, if people want to say, hey, what is your experience taking the qualitative research at NTUST, for example? Okay, whose data? Of course, the data from the students, all the foremost students, perhaps. Okay, but it's definitely from the first-hand, the interview. Okay, what else? Questionnaire, eh? Okay, we have questionnaire. Of course, sometimes the questionnaire can be done what? With qualitative response. You could ask them to have qualitative response. Good and bad. I couldn't say good or bad, but some limitation. What could be some other limitation if we conduct questionnaire?
Answer might be modified.
Modify?
To change their thought during this.
Oh, they might change their thoughts. Okay. What others? If you want to know their opinions or their voice and comments and feedback, and then you use questionnaire rather than interview, what could be the issue? They could only, very good. They could only follow the survey questions. If I ask you and then you answer. If I didn't ask you, then you wouldn't be able to know what else they think about, right? And also, I think the most important thing, anyone else? Do you like to answer survey questions? Will you spend a lot of time answering survey questions?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Apparently Elsa is very special. If you have any survey question, ask her to be your respondent. She will give you a very rich response. But I think the majority of the people, we all have a very busy schedule. Unless you just have to, unless if I don't do it, then I will be identified. Or unless, this is such a good friend as a researcher, I got to help out. So then I'll spend time trying to give as much as possible. Otherwise, okay, if this is anonymous, nobody knows. And you just get a survey question. Sometimes you just use very simple words, right? 2 keywords and phrases. You wouldn't be able to really know what exactly they were thinking about. Particularly teachers. You know, like if you go to the school, you give them a survey. Usually you get very simplified response. But the issues are not that simple. But you always get very simplified response because they are so busy. They don't have time to answer your qualitative written questions. Okay, so survey or questionnaire is another method. Okay, we wouldn't say qualitative research, you cannot use questionnaire. You could, but you still also need to know the limitations. Okay, I always ask my advisee, still use questionnaire because you always get people who are willing to give you more response, right? Then they could be your potential interviewees because you know that they are willing to share. Okay, so questionnaire will be the first step. And after that, you are looking for potential interviewees for further follow-up. Okay, so questionnaire is not excluded. You couldn't say, oh, questionnaire is only for quantitative. No, okay. This is also will be the very first step. Descriptive analytic, look at specialization, participant opinion, sampling technique, okay. Conceptualization, theoretical framework, okay. Now neutral research cues, literature review. Although I think quantitative research also. I don't think quantitative research do not need literature review. They still need literature review. They still need to justify why they need to answer the question using quantitative methods. The same logic. Okay. Yeah. Methodically, validity, insights, focus. I would say that the biggest distinction between quantitative and qualitative. What would be the biggest distinction? We will figure out later. Okay, we will have a discussion about this too. Okay. All right, let's move on. We have one more, huh? All right. Okay. We will address this question later, but I want you to think about if we want to make sure that, hey, our question has got a lot of credibility, it got trustworthy, this is a trustworthy qualitative study. So what are some of the features? What are some of the key features? When you have done this, then you can make sure this is a study with credibility, this is a study that's it's quite trustworthy. test your answers would be good. Okay. So what are the key features?
Nuances.
If you're all done, okay, Ian, please discuss what are the features, okay? You are not sure about the question?
Precise participants.
Yes, the features is
Value questions and strong reason to measure
as an individual small credit.
strong programs and so on.
So what are the features?
Research here. If we have, some place.
This is so interesting. Just you what? Make it smaller?
No, when I printed the only make it small, I employ just make it larger.
Yeah.
I
I make it larger.
So I just read as it is. So to make it more simple, not to become heavy, just cut. So
But you still need the hard copy. Okay, I see. Okay.
the same. I mean, the same. We always print it every time. Yeah, it's more convenient. You can just highlight it,
Yeah,
write
and
it,
then write it and respond. And then I like to go back and forth.
And I like to write something.
Me too.
Because electronic, it's not that easy to go like this.
I mean, it's not to read.
Um,
I'm not anything before I eyes more dangerous. Now, so get to claims.
All right. Could we have like the group here, group one, right here? Could you identify one feature? This one. Let's each group identify one feature. Okay. Any feature that will make the qualitative research more credible and trustworthy?
Make that the right literature review and the right question and the right group of
Right. Okay.
like ask the right group. Like be on the right path.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. You ask the right group of people. Okay. You can identify the right group of people. That's quite critical, right? That's why we have sampling techniques to see how to select the right group of people for answering your questions, right? Good. Okay. What about this group? Any feature? I will come back. Do you need?
The well-established
Well-established questionnaire. Well-established questionnaire. So you still prefer questionnaire?
Just questions.
Huh?
Interview questions. Just interview questions.
Okay. Of course, the questionnaire itself, it could include interview questions too, right? Questionnaire include general personal data and then interview questions. But I think, what is that word you use? Well established. Well established, that's the key. And how can we make it well established?
Define from others.
Other research, what else?
It's also literature review.
Literature review, other research, and what else? These are the things that when you develop your interview questions, I will ask you, how can you make sure that your interview questions are valid? That's it, right? You have to convince me that your interview questions are valid. And in this course, next week, we will talk about interview questions. And for your final project, you can conduct any kind of research topic of your own interest, research interest. But I will require you to use interview as one of the research methods. You could say, oh, I want to have several, fine. But one of them should be interview questions. When you have interview, you definitely have to design your interview questions, right? And I would definitely ask you, so how do you make sure that you have well-established interview questions? Okay, make sure that your interview questions are valid. Okay, are valid. Okay, good. So now, what about this group here? One of the key features.
Features that we get were valid questions, the right time, the right audience,
Yeah.
and forms of the interaction or process and its limitation.
Good. I think this group mentioned a very good, one of the good key features is ask the right questions, right? Ask the right question. In this course, a lot of times, I know that you are also taking other courses at the same time, I know, okay? But for this course, I want you to ask questions that are particularly, that should be addressed from a qualitative angle. You could have other questions addressed from other angles, quantitative angles, that's fine. But I would particularly focus on, okay, so which questions is from qualitative angle? Because qualitative questions do have its own features. It asks in a very different way. Later on we will see. Okay, qualitative questions have its own features. Okay, all right. Leslie, what about here? It's difficult to be the last one.
Yeah, because everyone.
You have already, okay. So mostly about all the right question, well-established questions, and then right participants, right? What else? Huh? Subjectivity. What about, okay, wow, it's very deep. Okay, so what about subjectivity?
Subjectivities, it because when we research, we have to recognize entity as well. Before subjectivities is researcher and you focus on this is not just other entities context, conception.
Okay, I think this group has raised a very deep question. Is about subjectivity. Subjectivity is because we are all human beings. Okay, even the researcher himself or herself, it's a human being. We have our own personal beliefs, our attitude, okay, our perceptions when we enter this research site. Just so I think one of the key features that you wouldn't see in quantitative study is you will be able to see a lot of papers. They will talk about who the researcher is. background, where he's from, and the relationship between this topic, and why he became interested in this topic, what kind of beliefs that he brought with her or brought in with him to this research site. Why? Because you want to make it clear that where you are from, okay, to start with. Because you are also a human being. You're not neutral, that you wouldn't be influenced by anything. No. You want to say this is what I believe, and you want to say all my claims, my findings are based on this, me as a researcher. So if you have the chance to read journal articles, there's a section called the researcher and the study. Okay, talk about a bit of the subjectivity of the authors, of the researcher. Okay, good. Let's take a look at your, let's see, hey, how come we only have 13 responses? Who is not missing one? We have been waiting for you for 10 minutes. Okay? That's good about technology, right? Observer, oh, anonymous. Okay, further knowledge, subject, okay, subjective nature, very good. Okay, cultural background, social context, research using qualitative methods aim to capture the subjectivity by engaging in details. Okay, right. Okay, observer, okay. If you are engaged in a long-term research, a lot of time, researchers are observer too. Okay? They are also seeing the phenomena at the same time. Data from previous study, good questions, appropriate sampling methods. Okay. Recheck the connection between inquiry and research questions. Contextualize research design, well-established interview questions. Make clear its limitations. Okay. Yeah. No research is perfect. Right question, right topic, right procedure. It's so easy to say right, okay? But how can we make sure it's all right, okay? Yeah, that's one. Okay, methods, precise, valid question, strong conceptual framework, okay? Right question, okay? Ask the right questions, okay, good. All right. Now let's move on. We're gonna, after all the background, we're gonna move on to what we're gonna cover this week. Okay, so I have questions for you to ponder, okay? I'm not gonna give you time to discuss, but these are the questions I want you to think, and then they might become the Kahoot questions next week. Okay, is qualitative research subjective? We talk about subjectivity, but do you think qualitative research is subjective? Okay, qualitative research does not deal with any numbers. Do you think qualitative research also deal with numbers? Or only quantitative study deals with numbers? Okay. There's no standard process for conducting qualitative research. Every question is very tricky. Last one. There are no criteria for judging good or bad qualitative research. Okay, once again, these are all very, very tricky questions. Okay. Do you think qualitative research is subjective? Subjective means that whatever I said is correct. Do you think qualitative research is like that? No. Okay. Well, okay. Could you discuss a little bit? I'm just curious about what do you think? Do you think that such qualitative research is subjective? And let me give you some time to discuss it, and we'll come back. Is it subjective?
Research can be subjective, right?
No, no comparison.
Objective,
Oh.
right?
I
if somebody based on subjective, no, it's not we need
Yeah.
objective.
It only depends on how every case you're trying to understand the collective subjective.
So you think people think it's subjective?
I think it depends.
And I would say,
What way the question.
story out,
So I think to make it objective,
It's subjective, but it's also
I think
but what if I say qualitative research by when I mean data, isn't there?
So in that sense,
warranted.
so are you saying that the detailed questions are sometimes you sort of make you a part of your research subjective? It's subjective.
What a product. One and a half years.
Maybe like different parts. It can be subjective or others.
And you have to make sure it makes sense and honest.
So if you think survey questions, is survey questions subjective?
It includes like does the research sample,
Survey questions.
including literature, that survey questions.
I mean, like, the reason that one quantitative research was
I'm a bit confused. What do you mean by survey?
Was like kind of like
Right, like a statement and ask the participant to they strongly agree or strongly disagree. So that's what you mean by survey question.
I think that's
Okay.
It includes like
And in that sense, is it objective or
it's the
subjective?
choice. Only depends on your personal
this includes more idea
favor or
that
is
is
it
like
based on
whether it's subjective
And so then it's subjective or
there's
objective.
more, I think it's
I mean, I think it, what I think it does, research journey for analyzing
Not talking about one sort of opinion is it subjective.
as made
I
it
think
related.
You know what I'm asking?
But the question is, if qualitative research is subjective and
Isn't that interesting?
objective,
Have you thought about this?
I mean, like, qualitative, if just qualitative research is objective, and then the quantitative, the opposite.
This is a very, very interesting question because a lot of times, a lot of people will say, oh, qualitative research is just subjective. You can write whatever you want to write. Is that so? Okay, Dima?
We decided that perhaps it's actually more ambiguous.
Ambiguous,
Yes.
rather than, it's another way to say it's subjective. We don't want to say it's subjective, say it ambiguous.
Like it can start as subjective, like main questions, could this be cool, but the result can be completely opposite to what you started.
And completely opposite than you started. So then it's ambiguous.
Yeah, because like
It's more like
Uh-huh.
when we design the questions
Uh-huh.
and we assume something will happen in this study.
Right.
So we ask this kind of research question, but
Right.
as we conduct them, maybe we find out the outcome is very different from our assumption.
Yeah.
So we can have a discussion part that discuss about why it will be different, why it differ from what we started.
Right.
And at this point, you have to convince others that this is valid. So from others' literature review, and you put a lot of things here, and finally, eventually, it will become objective.
Okay. Okay. Very interesting. Eventually, it will become objective and become non-ambiguous. Okay. All right. I think that they point out one of the key features of qualitative research is that a lot of times we did start with some research question, right? That's how we become interested in some phenomena. We look at the phenomena and then we become interested, and then we generate some questions. We went to the field and then we start to investigate what was really going on. And it is true, and it is true sometimes as time goes by, we researchers, we learn along the way, and we could possibly gain some observations and outcome that could be different, if not totally opposite. It could be different from originally what we have thought about. Is that possible? It's very possible. Because if you know everything already and everything is just like what you have thought about, then it's not that exciting. Or it's not like really you have to you need to get into the field to really figure out what's really going on. It's because you have some, uncertainty. And that uncertainty is the gap of our research. That's why we entered that field. Okay, and I agree. Once you realize it's not what you have thought, then you have to be honest about your research findings. You talk about what your research findings are. And it's still it's valid. It's nothing wrong, it's valid. Okay, and I think it makes the difference between qualitative and quantitative. I would say this is the key feature, one of the key features that sets apart these two, quantitative and qualitative. Because quantitative is that you have everything you want to measure that you are pretty sure these are the valuables. And then you have all the valuables designed in your questionnaire items. Already, done deal. Okay? Versus qualitative research it's exploratory. When we say it's exploratory in nature means you are exploring. So that's why you care about what people say. Because you still want to find something that you don't know from the interviewees. Right? And because it deals with human beings, so you might have different opinions. Okay, and even something that you probably didn't know. Alright, so that's the feature of, and so what is it? Let's go back to qualitative research is subjective. So far, would you say yes or would you say no?
I'll say yes.
You will say yes. Yes in a way. What way?
How we start.
How it started? Could you say a little bit more? Why is it how it started make it subjective?
I think the design is the first call, so the methodology, the research questions. Now, not all the reasons why it is qualitative, but at the design it will distinguish the qualitative research and the research.
Okay, but when we say subjective means that somebody, right, someone make it, I make this decision, I as a person, I make a decision. So that's why it's subjective, right?
You choose a certain people as your participant, I think.
Okay, and
This is part of this.
that part make it subjective.
I would say like each person has his or her different explanation about the topic. So like after you did the interview or the survey, you collect the data, but like every person can have different so that when you're writing the conclusion. So I think that part makes it subjective.
Okay, all right. So what he suggests is that it's not about the previous part, it's about after the findings, we as a researcher, because of where we are from, then we would interpret, okay? Because interpretation has a lot to do with who the researcher is. And that make our outcome, that part, subjective, okay? I would say yes, this part yes. Okay, let me say this, okay? I would say qualitative research is subjective in a way because I think as a researcher, we did make a decision about what we want to focus, where we want to conduct this research. Because there are so many settings. But we make that decision to where we want to do it, where we want to conduct this research, whom we would like to invite to be further investigated, for example, to be interviewed. It has a lot to do with the researcher himself or herself decisions. For that part, it is subjective. We could say that. Because the same questions, you as a researcher, you might have different judgments, different decisions. You as a researcher, you have another set. And so for you have one set of decision, you have another set of decision. That part is subjective. Okay. However, based on each decision we make, we still have to have rationale. When we have the rationale to say why we make this decision, why I make this decision, why I choose to come over here, this setting, why I sample or I decide to invite this set of interviewees rather than other sets. For that, all the decision, the rationale under each decision we make, I would say it's not only subjective, but it's also objective. Because you are based on certain logics and reasons to make that subjective decisions. It's not only say, I like it because I make that decision. I just like it. I feel like it. No. You have to provide your rationale. You have to, tell us why you make such decision. So I would say yes and no. Yes and no. Yes, because you as a human being, you do have a lot of times you make your own decision. Particularly, for example, the interpretations, even you have the final outcomes. You as a person, where you are from, your interpretation will be different. Your questions, the way of how you ask the questions, you select the questions will be very different. That part could be very subjective. When I say that part could be very subjective, would that make sense to you? Let me say, would that make sense to you? Would that make sense? Because you as a human being, me, for example, I personally, okay, I do care some issues, but I wouldn't care some other issues. It's the same for everybody. You prefer certain issues. You are not interested in certain research issues. That's for sure. Even the same research question, you want to address in this way rather than the other way. That could be very subjective. Don't you think? Don't you think that could be very subjective? I would like to approach that in this way, or I would like to interview those in the rural areas because I'm interested on this. That could be very subjective, and that subjectivity has a lot to do with the background of the researcher. A lot of times, if the researchers are from remote area, in her background, she would be much more interested, sensitive to this kind of issue. So for that, I would say it's subjective.
But has that to do with your method? Isn't that also subjective when applied researcher did have to pick a certain area
Mhm.
for questions.
Yeah, I think for that part, for quantitative, it's the same. So I wouldn't say quantitative, it's all very objective, nothing to do with personal preference. And still, I think that will still has a lot to do with personal interest. Okay, but however, I think the biggest difference is that when qualitative researcher, when they come into that research side, the biggest difference for survey outcome and the qualitative researcher is that we enter the research side, then we talk to the interviewees, we observe what's going on in that research site, versus they will probably stay there for quite some time. Some of them probably stay 1 week, 1 semester, try to understand what's really going on in that research setting, because you try to understand the phenomenon and the people, alright? Versus quantitative, they might, because they already have that specific issue to investigate, they came in and then they distribute the questionnaire items after you finish. Or, for example, after you have conduct an experiment, then you give the survey, you collect the data, and then you collect the data, you go back, and then who did all the interpretation and findings? SPSS software. So SPSS software is quite objective because it has certain way to decide whether it's significant different or not. There's a standard there, okay? But qualitative researcher, because of our background, everyone's different background and different research purpose, we might set the standard or criteria differently. That part makes qualitative research subjective. Okay, what you want to focus? Yeah, we two researchers came into the field. I want to focus on this one. You want to focus on that one, and our focus could be very different. That may get subjective. Okay, and subjective has a lot to do with the researcher's subjectivity, where they are from, what they're interested, what they would like to achieve for this research topic. Have I made this clear? Yeah? Okay, take a break. I know that your brain is like, Okay, let's take a break. Yeah, this one